The crystalline chamber hung in the darkness of space like a jewel suspended on invisible threads. It orbited a neutron star that pulsed with rhythmic light, casting strange shadows across the massive structure that housed the Galactic Council. Inside, representatives from 847 different species gathered in a vast amphitheater that could hold 50,000 beings at once. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the human section, a modest platform near the bottom of the chamber. Her position reflected humanity's standing in galactic society. 3 centuries had passed since humans first achieved faster-than-light travel and stumbled into a galaxy already claimed and divided. In those 300 years, humanity had learned their place. They were newcomers. They were primitives. They were tolerated but not respected. Sarah watched as the Zetharian representative rose to speak. The Zetharian was tall and reptilian, covered in blue-green scales that shimmered under the chamber's lights. His species had been part of the Council for over 2,000 years. They were considered wise. They were considered important. When a Zetharian spoke, others listened. The matter of the disputed territory is simple, the Zetharian ambassador declared, his voice amplified through translation devices that rendered his words in thousands of languages simultaneously. The world you humans call New Perth contains metamaterial deposits of significant value. These materials are crucial for gravitic technology. Humanity lacks the sophistication to properly utilize such resources. The Zetharian hegemony will assume administration of this world for the benefit of galactic civilization. Sarah stood up slowly. Her heart pounded, but her face remained calm. She had practiced this moment 1,000 times in her mind. "Ambassador," she said, her voice steady, "New Perth has been a human colony for 70 years. 4,300,000 humans live there. They have built cities, farms, schools, and homes. You cannot simply take an inhabited world because you want the minerals beneath it." Laughter rippled through sections of the chamber, not malicious laughter exactly, but the kind of amusement adults might share when a child says something naive. The Arxian Communion representative, a floating mass of crystalline structures that communicated through light patterns, pulsed in colors that translated to condescension. Young species always struggle with the concept of efficient resource allocation, the Arxian communicated. Sentiment toward dirt and buildings is understandable but inefficient. Your people can be relocated. The Council will ensure they are compensated fairly. Sarah's jaw tightened. She had been Earth's representative to the Council for 8 years. In that time, she had grown accustomed to being dismissed. Humanity's concerns were always secondary. Their protests were always overruled. The Council operated on the principle that older civilizations knew better, and humanity was among the youngest spacefaring species in the known galaxy. "This is not about efficiency," Sarah said, raising her voice. "This is about sovereignty. The Council's own charter recognizes the territorial rights of member species. New Perth is human territory, legally settled and recognized." The Valdorian observer stirred in his seat. The Valdorians were the oldest species in the Council, ancient beings who rarely spoke but whose opinions carried immense weight. He was humanoid in shape but seemed to be composed of living shadow, his features barely visible. The Charter contains provisions for territorial adjustment when galactic interests supersede local claims, the Valdorian said quietly. His voice was like wind through empty halls. "The Zetharians have invoked Article 73. The matter is within legal bounds." Sarah felt cold fear settle in her stomach. Article 73 had been used before, always against younger species, always to strip away their holdings when something valuable was discovered. She had known this was coming for weeks, ever since the Zetharian survey ships had finished mapping New Perth's geological treasures. "Then I call for a vote," Sarah said. "Let the Council decide if stripping an inhabited world from its rightful owners is truly in the interest of galactic civilization." The vote took 30 minutes. Species after species cast their decision into the central system. Green lights for supporting the Zetharian claim. Red lights for supporting humanity's right to keep their world. Sarah watched the tally with growing despair. 723 species voted green, 89 voted red, 35 abstained. The chamber filled with a sound like distant thunder as the verdict was rendered official. New Perth would be transferred to Zetharian administration. Human colonists had 6 standard months to evacuate. Compensation would be provided according to the standard relocation formula. Sarah stood in the silence that followed. Her hands gripped the railing in front of her seat. She thought of New Perth, of the city she had visited there, She thought of children playing in parks. She thought of farmers who had spent their entire lives cultivating alien soil to grow earth crops. She thought of all of it being erased because humanity was too young, too weak, too insignificant to matter. "How many warnings do we get?" Sarah asked quietly. The question was not amplified by her microphone. She had spoken too softly. But in the moment after the vote, her words carried in the strange acoustics of the crystalline chamber. The Arxian Communion's representative pulsed with curiosity. "Clarify your question, human ambassador." Sarah looked up at the assembled representatives. Hundreds of species, thousands of eyes and sensors and perception organs all focused on her. "How many warnings does humanity get before we are allowed to defend ourselves?" Sarah asked clearly, her voice now amplified for all to hear. No one answered. The question hung in the air like smoke. Sarah gathered her documents, placed them carefully in her case, and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the vast chamber. No one spoke as she left. The meeting continued after she was gone, moving on to other matters. The human problem had been resolved. There was other business to attend to. Sarah returned to the human embassy, a modest building on the council station. She sent one encrypted message back to Earth. It contained only 3 words. They chose this. 6 weeks later, Zetharian warships appeared in orbit around New Perth. The local human defense force consisted of 3 outdated patrol craft and a handful of orbital platforms designed to intercept asteroids, not military vessels. The Zetharians broadcasted their intentions clearly. The humans had 48 hours to begin evacuation procedures. Governor Marcus Wells, the colonial administrator of New Perth, sent desperate messages to Earth to the Council, to anyone who might help. The Council responded with a formal statement expressing hope that the transition would proceed peacefully. Earth sent one message back to Governor Wells: "Hold for 36 hours. Help is coming." Governor Wells did not understand. Earth was 6 weeks away, even at maximum faster than light speed. No help could possibly arrive in 36 hours. But he trusted his government. He sent a response to the Zetharians, requesting a 72-hour extension to the evacuation deadline for humanitarian reasons. The Zetharians interpreted the request as defiance. 30 hours after the first Zetharian ships arrived, they began orbital bombardment. They targeted government buildings first, then power generation facilities, then communication arrays. The strikes were precise, calculated to destroy infrastructure while minimizing casualties. The Zetharians considered themselves civilized conquerors. But bombs do not care about intentions. Buildings collapsed on people inside them. Power stations exploded, sending shrapnel through nearby residential areas. A communication tower fell onto a school. In 6 hours of bombardment, 4,300,000 people died. Every human on New Perth was killed. The Zetharians had not intended genocide, but they had achieved it through incompetence and callousness. When Earth received confirmation of the massacre, the response was silence. No statements were issued. No protests were filed with the Council. The human embassy on the Council station closed its doors. Ambassador Sarah Chen and her entire staff departed on the next transport back to human space. The Council barely noticed. A few species expressed mild concern about the loss of life on New Perth, but the general consensus was that humanity had learned an important lesson about galactic realities. The Zetharians began colonization operations on New Perth, salvaging human technology and stripping the planet of its valuable metamaterials. 3 months passed. The galaxy continued as it always had. Trade flowed through established routes. The Council mediated disputes between its member species. The Coltharian Empire and the Arxian Communion engaged in their usual rivalry. Everything was normal. Then the human merchant vessels stopped traveling outside human space. At first no one noticed. Then the pattern became clear. Every human ship, every human trader, every human diplomat had withdrawn behind their borders. The dozen star systems that comprised human territory went silent. Communication channels remained open but carried only automated responses to queries. The Council's intelligence services took note but were not alarmed. Humanity was clearly sulking over New Perth. They would emerge eventually when they needed resources they could not produce themselves. 4 months after the New Perth massacre, 2 Council monitoring stations near human space went offline. The species operating the stations reported that all personnel had disappeared. There was no sign of struggle, no evidence of violence. The stations were simply found empty when relief crews arrived. Then a Zetharian science vessel vanished near the border of human territory. Search parties found debris but no survivors, no witnesses, no explanation. The council convened an emergency session to discuss the mysterious incidents. Before the meeting could begin, a message arrived simultaneously at every council embassy, every governmental building, every major population center in civilized space. The message was simple text, translated into every known language. It read, "You had your chance for peace." Every human communication channel went dark immediately afterward. No responses to queries, no explanation, just silence from 12 star systems. The council's emergency session dissolved into confusion. What did the message mean? Was it a threat? Some species suggested sending peacekeeping forces to investigate human space. Others counseled patience. While the council debated, Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the ECS Retribution, a warship that officially did not exist. Around him, displayed on holographic screens, were 217 other ships that officially did not exist. They had been built in secret over the past 150 years, hidden in asteroid bases and deep space facilities, far from the shipping lanes and survey routes. "All ships report ready status," his tactical officer announced. "Commence operation," Admiral Webb said calmly. Across 200 light-years, human vessels decloaked simultaneously. They appeared around every Zetharian military installation, every major colony, every strategic asset, and in orbit around the Zetharian homeworld itself. The galaxy's long peace was over. Humanity's war had begun. The Galactic Council's Intelligence Center occupied 3 entire levels of the crystalline station. Analysts from dozens of species worked around the clock, monitoring communications, tracking ship movements, and assessing potential threats to galactic stability. In the 6 months following the New Perth incident, the center's focus had shifted increasingly toward the human enigma. Senior analyst Corthan, a methodical insectoid from the Varix hive, compiled his daily report on human activity. The data was concerning in its simplicity. 0 human vessels had been detected outside their territorial borders in 173 standard days. All human trade agreements had been quietly terminated. Human diplomats had recalled themselves from every embassy and outpost across the galaxy. "They are hiding," Corthan's supervisor said, reviewing the report. "Wounded pride drives them to isolation." Corthan was not entirely convinced, but he filed the report as requested. The consensus among council leadership was clear. Humanity was sulking. Give them time and economic necessity would force them back to the negotiating table. No species could survive in complete isolation, especially not one as young and resource-dependent as humanity. In the Zetharian capital city of Zeth Prime, celebrations continued. The metamaterial deposits from New Perth exceeded even the most optimistic projections. Mining operations had extracted enough raw materials to revolutionize Zetharian gravitational technology. Engineers estimated they could upgrade their entire fleet within 5 years. Governor Xanthier, now administrator of what the Zetharians had renamed Zeth Minor, walked through the ruins of a human city. Most of the structures had been demolished to make room for proper Zetharian architecture, but a few buildings remained as curiosities. He paused before what had once been a school. Human writing still marked its walls. "Tear it down tomorrow," Xanthier ordered his aide. "This entire sector will become a processing facility." His aide made a note on a data pad. Neither of them thought about the 4 million humans who had died here. The matter was settled. The council had ruled. Life continued. On Earth, in a conference room deep beneath the North American Defense Complex, a very different conversation was taking place. Admiral Marcus Webb stood before a holographic display showing the current disposition of human forces. The display would have shocked anyone from the Galactic Council. 217 warships, 46 carrier vessels, 123 support craft, an entire fleet that existed in no official records, that appeared in no registry, that had been constructed piece by piece over the course of 150 years. The Council believes we have 12 patrol craft and maybe 30 civilian vessels capable of combat retrofitting, Admiral Webb said to the assembled officers. Our intelligence suggests they have never bothered to look deeper. Why would they? We are primitives who stumbled into faster-than-light travel through luck rather than genius. Fleet Commander Yuki Tanaka pulled up another display. Our projections show the Zetharians have 42 military vessels in their home system, 78 spread across their colonies, and another 116 in their forward operating bases. Their fleet is large but designed for peacekeeping operations and intimidation. They have not fought a real war in 400 years. And their allies? Someone asked. The Council's peacekeeping fleet is formidable on paper, Tanaka replied, but it is spread across the entire galaxy. Response time to any crisis is measured in weeks, sometimes months. We have 6 days until our attack window closes. The nearest Council reinforcements are 43 days away. Admiral Webb looked at the faces around the table. These men and women represented the best of humanity's military leadership. They had spent their entire careers preparing for a war they hoped would never come. But humanity had learned a hard lesson in its 300 years among the stars. The galaxy respected only strength. Commence final preparations, Webb ordered. All personnel to be recalled from civilian sectors. All families to be moved to secure locations. We need everyone to understand what is about to happen. This is not a limited engagement. This is total war. The orders went out through encrypted channels. Across human space, military families received coded messages. Children were pulled from schools. Spouses quit their jobs. Entire communities relocated to fortified stations deep in asteroid fields. The human economy, already strained by the trade embargo, shifted entirely to war production. The Council noticed none of this. Their surveillance systems watched human borders but saw nothing alarming. No military buildups, no aggressive fleet movements, just 12 star systems that had apparently decided to turn inward. In the Arxian Communion's core worlds, the telepathic crystals that formed their collective consciousness discussed the human situation. The Arxians prided themselves on their ability to understand other species through direct mental connection. They had studied humans extensively during first contact 3 centuries ago. The human mind is chaotic but readable, the eldest Arxian communicated to the collective. They feel emotions strongly. Anger, grief, pride. They are undoubtedly hurt by the New Perth decision, but they will accept reality. All young species eventually do. The Arxians could not have known how wrong they were. Human military planners had spent decades studying Arxian telepathy. They had discovered that human brains, with their electrical complexity and quantum entanglement at the neuronal level, were naturally resistant to deep telepathic scanning. Arxians could read surface emotions but nothing deeper. Humanity's secrets remained hidden behind walls of neural chaos that telepaths found impenetrable. As the months passed, small incidents began to occur near human space. A Zetharian science vessel investigating an anomaly near the human border sent a distress call, then went silent. Recovery teams found debris and no survivors. The official conclusion was mechanical failure. 2 Council monitoring stations reported equipment malfunctions, then ceased all transmissions. When relief crews arrived, they found the stations abandoned. All personnel were gone. Personal belongings remained. Food was still on tables, but every living being had vanished. The Council's intelligence services flagged the incidents as concerning but not critical. Space was dangerous. Equipment failed. Perhaps the station crews had evacuated due to some undetected threat, and their rescue beacons had malfunctioned. Only analyst Corthan connected the incidents to human activity. He filed a report suggesting increased surveillance of human space. His supervisor dismissed the recommendation as paranoia. The humans have 300 years of civilization beyond their home world, the supervisor said. The Zetharians have 3,000. The Arxians have 7,000. The Valdorians claim 40,000. You suggest these children pose a threat to the galactic order? Absurd. Corthan did not argue, but he privately increased his monitoring efforts. Something felt wrong. The pattern was too perfect. Humanity had not simply withdrawn from galactic society. They had extracted every single human from non-human space with methodical precision. No one was left behind. No stragglers remained in foreign ports. It was as if humanity was preparing for something catastrophic. Inside human space, the preparations reached their climax. Every ship had been positioned. Every weapon had been loaded. Every soldier knew their assignment. The fleet that had been hidden for generations was ready to reveal itself. Fleet Commander Tanaka stood on the bridge of the ECS Vengeance, watching the countdown timer. Around her, 100 officers performed final system checks. The ship was a marvel of human engineering, a fusion of stolen alien technology and human innovation that had produced something the galaxy had never seen before. "Quantum entanglement weapons are charged," her tactical officer reported. "Relativistic kinetic missiles are loaded. Shield generators are at maximum capacity." Tanaka nodded. The human fleet incorporated technology from a dozen different species, all of it reverse-engineered and improved upon. The Council had been generous with their technology over the centuries, sharing advances to help primitive humanity develop. They had never imagined that humans would take every gift, study it, break it down to its fundamental principles, and rebuild it into something more efficient and more deadly. "All fleet elements report ready," communications announced. Tanaka opened a channel to Admiral Webb, who commanded the operation from his flagship, the ECS Retribution. "Sir, we are ready to proceed." Webb's voice came back calm and steady. "Send the message." Across the galaxy, at every council embassy, every major government building, every population center of significance, a message appeared simultaneously. The coordination required for such a feat was staggering. It meant human intelligence had penetrated every major system in civilized space. The message was simple. You had your chance for peace. Within seconds, every human communication channel went dark. No responses to queries, no explanations offered, just complete and total silence. The Council's emergency session convened immediately. Representatives demanded answers. What did the message mean? Was it a threat? Should they respond with force or diplomacy? While they debated, human ships moved into position. They had been waiting in dark space, powered down, virtually undetectable. Now they ignited their engines and charged their weapons. The fleet split into multiple battle groups, each with a specific target. The largest group, commanded by Admiral Webb himself, headed for the Zetharian homeworld. The second largest, under Fleet Commander Tanaka, moved toward the Zetharian colonial cluster where New Perth was located. Smaller groups dispersed to Zetharian military bases, mining operations, and strategic infrastructure. The operation required perfect timing. Human vessels would appear simultaneously across 200 light-years of space. The shock value alone would be worth months of conventional warfare. Admiral Webb stood on his bridge watching the timer count down to 0. Around the Zetharian homeworld, 37 Zetharian military vessels patrolled in peacetime formations. They were about to have a very bad day. "All ships," Webb said quietly into the fleet channel. "Decloak and engage." Across Zetharian space, human vessels dropped their stealth systems and appeared on sensors. The effect was immediate and devastating. Alarms blared in every Zetharian command center. Ships that were not supposed to exist suddenly filled their sensors. The humans had not come to negotiate. The war had begun, and the galaxy had no idea what was about to hit them. The Zetharian Defense Command Center on Zeth Prime had operated for 600 years without facing a genuine military crisis. When alarms began screaming across every station simultaneously, the duty officer's first assumption was a system malfunction. Then the sensor displays updated and all thoughts of technical errors vanished. 34 unknown vessels had appeared in orbit around the homeworld. They were massive, larger than Zetharian battleships, and their energy signatures were off the charts. More contacts appeared by the second as human ships decloaked throughout Zetharian space. "Identify those vessels," the command officer shouted. "Sir, the computer cannot match them to any known design in our database," the sensor operator replied, his voice shaking. "But their communication protocols are human." The command officer stared at the display in disbelief. Humans did not have warships like this. Humans barely had a functional military. The Council had kept detailed records of human capabilities. They operated patrol craft and civilian vessels, nothing more. This must be an error. Run full diagnostic on all sensor systems. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission." Admiral Marcus Webb's face appeared on the main display. He was human, clearly visible as such, wearing a military uniform that looked professional and well-designed. Behind him, a ship's bridge bustled with activity. Everything about the transmission spoke of competence and preparation. "Attention, Zetharian Defense Command," Webb said calmly. "You are hereby ordered to power down all military vessels and defensive installations. You have 10 minutes to comply. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your fleet. This is your only warning." The transmission ended. The Zetharian command officer felt rage replace his shock. How dare these primitives threaten the homeworld of a species that had ruled space for 3,000 years? Deploy all available forces. Prepare orbital defense platforms. Send a priority alert to all Zetharian vessels in neighboring systems. We will crush this human insolence. The Zetharian fleet moved to intercept. 37 warships, each representing centuries of technological advancement and military tradition. They were the pride of the hegemony, equipped with graviton beam weapons, quantum shielding, and faster-than-light capable engines. The human fleet waited calmly as the Zetharians approached. When the range closed to weapons distance, the Zetharians opened fire first. Brilliant beams of concentrated gravitational force lanced toward human ships, weapons designed to crush enemy vessels by creating localized gravity wells that would tear them apart. The beams struck human shields and dissipated. The human vessels did not even slow down. "Report," the Zetharian fleet commander demanded. "Why are our weapons not effective?" "Sir, the humans appear to have shield technology that disperses gravitational attacks. Their shields operate on a principle we do not understand. Then use kinetic weapons, missiles, anything." The Zetharian fleet launched a massive salvo of missiles. Hundreds of warheads screamed toward human positions. The human point defense systems activated, and the space between the fleets lit up with defensive fire. But several missiles got through. They struck human shields and detonated with enough force to vaporize a small moon. When the explosions cleared, the human ships were undamaged. Their shields flickered and reformed, showing stress but not failure. Now it was humanity's turn to demonstrate their weapons. The human fleet opened fire with what they called relativistic kinetic missiles. These were not explosive warheads. They were simply extremely dense projectiles accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. When they struck their targets, the impact released more energy than any conventional weapon. The first Zetharian battleship exploded before its crew even registered the incoming fire. The projectile punched through its shields as if they did not exist, penetrated the hull, and the resulting kinetic energy conversion vaporized the entire vessel. 600 Zetharians died in an instant. Then the human quantum entanglement weapons activated. These were humanity's crown jewel, developed from stolen Arxian technology and improved upon. They created localized quantum connections between their firing point and their target, bypassing the concept of distance entirely. When they fired, the energy appeared directly inside enemy ships, ignoring shields and armor completely. Zetharian vessels began exploding from the inside out. Their shields could not protect against weapons that did not travel through normal space. Their armor was useless against energy that manifested inside their hulls. The engagement lasted 73 minutes. At the end of those 73 minutes, the Zetharian home fleet was gone. 37 warships destroyed. 15,000 Zetharian military personnel killed. 0 human casualties. Admiral Webb broadcast to Zeth Prime. "Your fleet is destroyed. Power down your orbital defense platforms or we will destroy them, and your cities will be exposed to orbital debris. You have 5 minutes." This time the Zetharians complied. The defense platforms went dark. The homeworld of a species that had conquered dozens of star systems now lay helpless beneath human weapons. Similar scenes played out across Zetharian space. Fleet Commander Tanaka's group arrived at what had been New Perth. Zetharian mining operations covered the planet now, and a small fleet of 30 vessels guarded the valuable metamaterial deposits. Tanaka's ships emerged from faster-than-light travel, already firing. The Zetharian defenders had no time to prepare. In 40 minutes, the Zetharian fleet was destroyed, and human marines were landing on the surface. The Zetharians on the ground surrendered without resistance. They watched as human soldiers moved through the ruins of human cities with weapons ready. The humans did not open fire on civilians. They secured the mining facilities, arrested the colonial administration, and raised Earth's flag over what they still called New Perth. At every Zetharian military base, at every colony, at every strategic installation, human forces appeared with overwhelming power and executed their attacks with surgical precision. They targeted military assets exclusively. Civilian casualties were minimal and accidental, but the message was clear and brutal. Humanity had been underestimated. That mistake would cost the Zetharians their empire. In the Galactic Council chambers, chaos erupted. Representatives shouted over one another. Security forces struggled to maintain order. The news from Zetharian space was impossible to believe, yet the reports kept coming. The humans have destroyed the Zetharian home, fleet. Human forces have occupied 17 Zetharian colonies. All Zetharian military installations are reporting surrender or destruction. The Arxian Communion representative tried to bring order to the chaos. We must respond immediately. Send the Council peacekeeping fleet to Zetharian space. Humanity must be stopped before this aggression spreads. The nearest peacekeeping forces are 6 weeks away, someone shouted back. By the time they arrive, the war will be over. The Koltharian Empire's ambassador stood, his forearms spread wide. The Koltharians were large, warlike beings who respected strength above all else. I propose we acknowledge reality. Humanity has proven themselves capable of warfare. The Zetharians provoked this conflict by destroying New Perth. The humans are simply responding in kind. They destroyed our entire fleet, the Zetharian ambassador screamed. 15,000 of my people are dead. 4 million humans died on New Perth, the Koltharian replied coldly. Did you expect no response? The argument dissolved into accusations and counter-accusations. Species took sides based on ancient alliances and current rivalries. The unity that the Council prided itself on crumbled in hours. On Zeth Prime, Governor Xanthir was dragged from his office by human soldiers. He was placed in restraints and transported to a human ship in orbit. There he found himself in a holding cell with dozens of other Zetharian officials, all looking confused and terrified. Admiral Webb himself came to address them. He stood outside the cell, his expression hard but not cruel. You are being held as prisoners of war, Webb said. You will be treated in accordance with military law. You will not be tortured. You will not be executed without trial. You will be held until this conflict is resolved. You cannot do this, Xanthir protested. The Council will never accept human authority over Zetharian space. You are making an enemy of the entire galaxy. Webb's expression did not change. The Council had its chance to prevent this. They chose to allow the massacre of New Perth. They chose to ignore humanity's sovereignty. Now they will deal with the consequences. What are your demands? Xanthir asked. Complete Zetharian military disarmament. Return of all territory taken from other species in the last century. Reparations for New Perth. And war crime trials for everyone involved in the decision to bombard civilian populations. The Council will never agree to such terms. The Council does not have a choice, Webb replied. We are not negotiating with the Council. We are negotiating with the Zetharian government, and they will agree or we will ensure Zeth Prime understands what you did to New Perth. Webb turned and left. Xanthir sat in his cell and realized for the first time that the humans were serious. They had not come for limited objectives or symbolic victories. They had come to completely destroy Zetharian military power and remake the political structure of the galaxy. On Earth, Ambassador Sarah Chen watched the news broadcasts with mixed emotions. The war was progressing exactly as planned. Human casualties were minimal. The Zetharians were surrendering their positions across their territory, but she knew this was only the beginning. Her assistant entered her office. Ambassador, we are receiving reports that the Koltharian Empire is mobilizing its fleet. They are not moving to defend the Zetharians. They appear to be positioning to claim Zetharian territory for themselves. Sarah closed her eyes. She had predicted this. The war with the Zetharians was never going to be the real challenge. The real challenge would be preventing the entire galaxy from descending into chaos as opportunistic species saw their chance to reshape the political order. Prepare a new message for all Council species, Sarah said. It is time for Phase 2. Her assistant looked confused. Phase 2, ma'am. The Council thought we wanted revenge against the Zetharians, Sarah explained. They were wrong. We want to destroy the Council itself and build something better in its place. The war with the Zetharians was just the opening move. Now we show the galaxy what the Council really is. Sarah activated her communication system and began drafting the message that would fracture galactic civilization. In her hands, she held intercepted communications from the Council's leadership, secret documents that proved the Council had manipulated conflicts for centuries to maintain power. Humanity was not just going to win a war. They were going to start a revolution, and the galaxy was about to learn that humans did not forgive easily, and they never forgot. The Galactic Council chambers had witnessed many historic moments in its 1,000-year existence, but nothing compared to the chaos that erupted when Ambassador Sarah Chen's message arrived. Every species representative, every dignitary, every observer received the same data package simultaneously. Within minutes, the carefully maintained facade of galactic unity shattered. The package contained 300 years of classified council communications, secret agreements between founding species to suppress younger civilizations, evidence of manufactured conflicts designed to keep potential rivals fighting each other, instead of challenging council authority. Financial records showing how the council's elite had profited from the suffering of countless worlds. Most damning of all, the documents proved that the council leadership had known about Zetharian plans to attack New Perth weeks in advance. They had allowed the massacre to proceed, believing it would teach humanity their place in the galactic order. The Varix hive representative, a usually calm and rational species, threw their data tablet across the chamber. We were told our colony dispute with the Manthar Union was organic. These documents show the Council engineered the entire conflict to prevent our species from forming an alliance. The Manthar ambassador turned to face their historical enemy. For 200 years, the Varix and Manthar had fought over border systems, thousands dying in skirmishes and terrorist attacks. The hatred between their species ran deep. But now both species read the same documents, saw the same evidence that their conflict had been deliberately created and maintained by council manipulation. They set us against each other, the Manthar ambassador said quietly. All those deaths, all that hatred, it was manufactured. Other species began shouting similar revelations. Ancient grudges that had shaped galactic politics for centuries were revealed as council constructions. Trade disputes that had seemed random were actually carefully orchestrated. Even some wars had been encouraged by council leadership to prevent potential challengers from growing too powerful. The Arxian Communion representative tried to restore order. These documents could be forgeries. Humanity has every reason to lie and divide us. Then explain this. Sarah Chen's voice cut through the chaos. She had appeared in the chamber via hologram, standing in the center of the amphitheater. I have here a communication from the Arxian Council to the Zetharian High Command, dated 3 weeks before the New Perth attack. Let me read it. The human presence on the metamaterial-rich world represents an inefficiency. Should military action become necessary to correct this situation, the Communion will support Council recognition of Zetharian authority. Young species must learn their limitations. The Arxian representative's crystalline structure pulsed with colors that the translation systems rendered as distress. That communication was classified at the highest level. How did you obtain it? You told us humans were primitive, Sarah replied. You told us we were too young, too unsophisticated to understand galactic politics. You never imagined we might be learning from you. For 300 years, human intelligence services have infiltrated every major system in council space. We learned to speak your languages. We learned to break your encryptions. We learned to hide in plain sight. She gestured, and new documents appeared on every display in the chamber. Here are the Council's contingency plans for dealing with emerging species that show too much potential. Notice that 63 species over the last 2,000 years have been systematically suppressed, their growth stunted, their expansion limited. Notice that 12 species have been completely eliminated when they refused to accept Council authority. The chamber descended into pandemonium. Species demanded answers from Council leadership. Ancient alliances began fracturing. New coalitions formed in minutes as species realized they shared common grievances against the Council's founding members. The Valdorian observer, who had remained silent throughout the chaos, finally stood. The ancient being's shadowy form seemed to grow larger, and his voice carried weight that silenced the chamber. The human accusations are partially true, the Valdorian admitted. The Council was designed to maintain stability. Sometimes stability requires intervention. Young species are chaotic. They start wars. They make mistakes that cost lives. We guided them, shaped them, prevented catastrophes. You controlled them, Sarah corrected. You decided which species deserved to grow and which needed to be suppressed. You appointed yourselves as the galaxy's masters and everyone else as your subjects. We are the oldest, the Valdorian replied. We have wisdom born of 40,000 years of civilization. Would you have chaos instead? Would you prefer a galaxy where every species fights for dominance? Where wars consume entire sectors? I would prefer a galaxy where species are free to determine their own futures, Sarah said. Where the strong do not automatically rule the weak simply because they are strong. Where justice means something more than whatever the powerful decide it means. A new alarm cut through the argument. The chamber's security systems detected multiple military vessels entering the system. The sensors identified them as Koltharian warships, hundreds of them, and they were not on a peacekeeping mission. The Koltharian ambassador stood with what appeared to be satisfaction. My government has decided the Zetharians can no longer be trusted to govern their territory. The Koltharian Empire will assume administration of former Zetharian space. We have dispatched our fleet to secure key systems. You are using this chaos to grab territory, the Arxian accused. This is naked opportunism. This is pragmatism, the Koltharian replied. The humans have destroyed Zetharian military power. Someone must fill the vacuum. Better us than them. Sarah's hologram flickered as she received new information. Her expression remained calm, but her words carried an edge. Fleet Commander Tanaka, please explain to the Council what is happening in former Zetharian space. A new hologram appeared beside Sarah. Fleet Commander Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of her flagship, and behind her, tactical displays showed ship positions throughout Zetharian territory. Koltharian forces have engaged Zetharian civilian vessels and are landing troops on 3 colony worlds, Tanaka reported. They are not securing territory. They are invading it. Preliminary reports indicate civilian casualties. Sarah turned to the Koltharian ambassador. You see an opportunity to expand your empire. We see a predator attacking wounded prey. This is exactly why the Council's system must end. You have no authority here, human, the Koltharian ambassador growled. You started this chaos. You destroyed the Zetharian fleet and left their territory undefended. Now you complain when others act in their own interests? We destroyed a military force that committed genocide, Sarah replied. We did not give you permission to victimize Zetharian civilians. Fleet Commander Tanaka, please intercept the Koltharian forces. The Koltharian ambassador laughed. You would fight us to protect the Zetharians? The same species that destroyed New Perth? We will fight anyone who targets civilians, Sarah said coldly. That is the difference between us and you. We do not forgive what the Zetharians did, but we will not allow others to do the same to them. Fleet Commander, you are authorized to engage. Tanaka saluted and her hologram disappeared. In orbit around 3 former Zetharian colony worlds, human ships moved to intercept Koltharian forces. The Koltharians, confident in their numerical superiority, opened fire immediately. They learned the same lesson the Zetharians had learned. Human ships were not easy targets. Human weapons did not follow the standard rules of engagement. Within an hour, the Koltharian invasion force was retreating, leaving 37 destroyed ships behind. In the council chambers, other species watched this development with growing concern. The humans had defeated the Zetharians, who were a major military power. Now they had defeated a Koltharian force, and the Koltharian Empire was considered the most militaristic species in the galaxy. How powerful were the humans? The Arxian Communion representative made a decision. We must stop this before it spreads further. I propose emergency council authorization to designate humanity as a threat to galactic security. We should mobilize all available peacekeeping forces. On what grounds? Asked the representative from the Drexy cluster, a species that had remained neutral. The humans destroyed a fleet that had committed genocide. They defended civilians from invasion. By what definition are they the threat? They possess military power that exceeds their maturity, the Arxian explained. A species only 300 years old should not have the capability to challenge ancient civilizations. This imbalance is dangerous. The imbalance is only dangerous to those who benefited from the old system, the Drexy replied. I move that we acknowledge the human grievances as legitimate and negotiate a new council structure that provides equal representation to all species. The vote that followed divided the council in ways not seen in 1,000 years. 312 species voted to oppose humanity militarily. 378 species voted to negotiate with humanity. 157 abstained, waiting to see which side would prevail. The council had fractured. Species that had cooperated for centuries now eyed each other with suspicion. Old alliances collapsed as species realized their partners had benefited from council manipulation. New coalitions formed based on shared grievances rather than ancient bonds. In the midst of this chaos, 5 species declared independence from council authority entirely. They announced they would govern themselves without council interference. The council's peacekeeping forces moved to intervene, but the independent species called for human protection. Sarah Chen found herself negotiating mutual defense pacts with species she had never even spoken to before. Humanity's fleet, designed to fight one war against the Zetharians, was suddenly being pulled in multiple directions as the galactic order collapsed. On the bridge of the ECS Retribution, Admiral Webb reviewed the strategic situation with growing concern. "We planned for war with the Zetharians. We planned for Council opposition. We did not plan for complete systemic collapse. We pulled the keystone from the arch," his chief of staff replied. "Now the whole structure is coming down. Then we need to figure out how to rebuild before everyone kills each other," Webb said. "Contact Ambassador Chen. Tell her we need to move to Phase 3 ahead of schedule." In a secure chamber deep within the Council station, the three founding species met in secret. The Zetharians, despite their defeat, still held a council seat. The Arxians represented the telepathic species. The Valdorians represented the ancient civilizations. Together they had guided the galaxy for 2,000 years. Now they faced extinction of their authority. "We have one option remaining," the Valdorian said quietly. "The Void Protocols." The Arxian representative pulsed with alarm. "Those weapons have been forbidden for 8,000 years. Their use nearly destroyed galactic civilization. And their threat has maintained peace for 8,000 years, the Valdorian replied. "Humanity must be made to understand that some lines cannot be crossed. We will give them one chance to return to their territory and accept permanent limitations on their expansion. If they refuse, we activate the Void Protocols and eliminate the threat they pose." The Zetharian representative, still reeling from the loss of his species' fleet, nodded agreement. "Do whatever is necessary. Humanity must be stopped." The meeting adjourned. The founding species began preparing to use weapons that had not been activated in millennia. Weapons that could sterilize entire star systems. Weapons that could erase a species from existence. Humanity had shaken the foundations of galactic civilization. Now they would face the consequences of their revolution. The message arrived simultaneously at every human military installation, every government building, every ship in the human fleet. It was broadcast on all frequencies, translated into every human language and marked with the highest priority designation. The three founding species of the Galactic Council had issued their final ultimatum. Admiral Webb read the message on his bridge, his expression growing darker with each word. "Humanity has violated the fundamental principles of galactic civilization. You have destroyed a council member's fleet. You have interfered in territorial disputes that do not concern you. You have released classified information that has destabilized the galactic order. These actions cannot be tolerated. You are hereby ordered to withdraw all military forces to your original 12 systems. You will accept permanent restrictions on your expansion, your military development, and your political influence. You have 72 hours to comply. Failure to comply will result in the activation of the Void Protocols. Humanity will be eliminated as a threat to galactic civilization. This is not negotiable. This is your only warning." The bridge crew fell silent. Everyone knew what the Void Protocols meant. Every species in the galaxy knew the legends. 8,000 years ago, in a war that had consumed entire sectors, weapons had been created that could unmake reality itself. They could collapse stars. They could shatter planets. They could sterilize entire solar systems, leaving nothing but radiation and death. The Council's founding species had used these weapons to end that ancient war, and then they had buried them, swearing they would never be used again. The fear of those weapons had helped maintain galactic peace for millennia. Now that fear was being weaponized against humanity. "Sir," the communications officer said quietly, "we are receiving reports from our intelligence assets. The founding species have begun activating the Void Protocol installations. 7 ancient weapons platforms are being powered up across the galaxy. Each one is capable of destroying an entire star system." Webb stood and walked to the tactical display. "How long until they can fire?" "Estimates range from 48 to 72 hours. The technology is ancient and requires extensive preparation sequences. And our countermeasures?" The tactical officer pulled up a new display. "Operation Safeguard is ready to proceed. We have teams positioned near all 7 weapons platforms. They have been in place for 3 months." Webb allowed himself a small smile. "Then we proceed as planned. Contact Ambassador Chen. Tell her it is time for the final revelation." In the Galactic Council chambers, the atmosphere was tense. Species waited to see if humanity would back down. Some hoped for peace. Others anticipated human surrender. A few secretly hoped the founding species would carry out their threat, eliminating the human problem permanently. Sarah Chen's hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. She looked tired but determined. Behind her, screens showed images that made several species representatives gasp. "You threatened to activate the Void protocols," Sarah said without preamble. "You believed these ancient weapons would force humanity to surrender. You believed we had no defense against such overwhelming power." She gestured to the screens behind her. They showed the 7 weapons platforms scattered across the galaxy. Ancient structures, massive and ominous, hanging in deep space. But they were not alone. At each platform, human special forces teams were visible, already inside the installations. For 6 months, while you debated and maneuvered, human intelligence services identified every Void protocol installation. We infiltrated them. We studied them. And 3 days ago, we disabled them. The Valdorian observer rose from his seat. "Impossible. Those installations are protected by technology you cannot possibly understand. They are shielded by barriers that no known force can penetrate." "You are correct that we could not penetrate the barriers," Sarah agreed. "So we went through the maintenance access ports. Turns out that even ancient superweapons need upkeep. Your maintenance crews have been very helpful, though they did not know they were helping us." A new figure appeared on the screens behind Sarah. He was human, wearing the uniform of Special Operations Forces, and he stood inside one of the ancient installations. The architecture around him was clearly alien, clearly ancient, and clearly inactive. "This is Captain Rodriguez," Sarah explained. "He and his team disabled the primary power distribution network for Platform 7 3 hours ago. Similar operations have been completed at all 7 installations. Your super weapons are now very expensive pieces of decoration." The chamber erupted in shouting. The founding species demanded explanations. Other species laughed or applauded. The Coltharian ambassador, still bitter about his fleet's defeat, looked almost pleased at the founding species' embarrassment. The Valdorian's shadowy form seemed to dim. "You have been planning this since New Perth." "We have been planning this since first contact," Sarah corrected. 300 years ago, when we met your scouts and learned about the Galactic Council, our leaders made a decision. We would join your civilization, but we would never be vulnerable to it. Every treaty we signed included backdoors. Every technology you shared with us, we reverse-engineered and improved. Every installation you showed us, we mapped and studied. We pretended to be primitive because it made you underestimate us." "Why?" the Arxian Communion asked. "If you possessed such capabilities, why hide them? Why endure 3 centuries of restriction and insult?" "Because we needed to understand you," Sarah replied. "We needed to learn how galactic civilization worked, identify its weaknesses, and prepare for the moment when we would need to protect ourselves. That moment came when you allowed the Zetharians to destroy New Perth. 4 million humans died because we were not strong enough to stop you. We will never be that weak again." Admiral Webb's hologram appeared beside Sarah's. "The founding species intended to use the Void protocols to force our surrender. They believed they held ultimate power. But power is meaningless if you are afraid to use it. We called their bluff." "This is not a bluff," the Valdorian said, his ancient voice carrying genuine anger for the first time. "You may have disabled the platforms, but we can rebuild them. We can create new weapons. We have 40,000 years of accumulated knowledge. You have 300. And in those 300 years, we learned something your civilization forgot," Sarah said. "Progress does not come from age. It comes from necessity. You became comfortable. You became complacent. You believed your age gave you wisdom, but it only gave you arrogance." She pulled up new data on the chamber displays. "Here is what humanity offers. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We do not want an empire. We want a new council, one that serves all species equally. Every species gets equal representation regardless of age or power. No species can vote on another species' internal affairs. The council exists to mediate disputes, not to control civilizations. Trade remains free. Military forces remain sovereign. Conflicts are resolved through negotiation, not manipulation. And if we refuse?" the Zetharian representative asked. "Then humanity will enforce this new order alone," Admiral Webb replied. "We have proven we can defeat your fleets. We have proven we can infiltrate your installations. We have proven we can counter your superweapons. You can fight us, but you will lose. Or you can accept that the old order is dead and help us build something better." The Drexy cluster representative, who had been neutral throughout the conflict, spoke up. "I support the human proposal. The old council was built on the principle that some species deserve more power than others. This proposal offers true equality. Other species began voicing support. Not all of them, not even a majority at first, but enough to show that the council was genuinely divided. The founding species had lost their absolute authority. The Valdorian observer looked at Sarah and Admiral Webb. For 40,000 years his species had guided galactic civilization. Now a species barely 3 centuries old was dictating terms. "You have won," the Valdorian admitted. "Not through superior morality or greater wisdom. You won through ruthlessness and preparation. You studied us for 300 years and struck at the moment when we were most vulnerable. That is not justice. That is conquest." "You are right," Sarah agreed. "This is not justice. Justice would have been the council protecting New Perth. Justice would have been fair treatment from the beginning. We did not get justice. We got war. Now we are offering peace, but on our terms." Over the next 30 days, the galaxy transformed. 412 species signed the new council charter. These included many of the smaller, younger civilizations that had been suppressed under the old system. They also included several ancient species who recognized that the old order was truly finished. The Zetharians, facing war crime tribunals and reparations, had no choice but to sign. Their military was destroyed. Their government was in chaos. They agreed to disarm completely and to pay restitution for New Perth over the next 50 years. The Coltharian Empire refused to sign, as did 36 other species. They withdrew from council space entirely, forming their own federation. The galaxy fractured, but not into chaos. Instead, it formed 2 distinct spheres: the new Galactic Council, reformed according to human principles, and the Coltharian Federation, preserving the old ways of power and conquest. The humans, pragmatic as always, established defense pacts with their council allies. Their fleet remained on high alert. They knew the Coltharians would eventually test their resolve. The Arxian Communion joined the new council reluctantly. They maintained that humanity's methods were too brutal, too ruthless. But they acknowledged that the old system had been corrupt. The Valdorians withdrew from active governance. They remained as observers, watching with ancient eyes as the galaxy reorganized itself under human influence. 6 months after the crisis began, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the new council chambers. The architecture had been redesigned to reflect all member species equally. There were no privileged positions, no hierarchy of seating. The human contribution was a wing made of translucent steel, a material that was strong but allowed light to pass through. Transparency and strength, that was humanity's statement. Sarah looked out at the assembled species. Hundreds of civilizations, all with equal voices now. Some were ancient, some were young. All were learning to cooperate without the old hierarchies. "Was it worth it?" Admiral Webb asked, standing beside her. He had retired from active service, but he remained as a military advisor to the council. Sarah thought about New Perth, about the 4,300,000 people who had died there, about the 15,000 Zetharians killed in the war, about the 89 million beings who had died in the conflicts that followed the council's collapse. "I do not know," she admitted. "We achieved what we set out to do. No species will ever dismiss humanity as primitive again, but the cost was terrible." "The cost of staying weak would have been worse," Webb replied. "If we had accepted the restrictions, if we had knelt, humanity would have remained subject to council whims forever. We would have been slaves calling ourselves citizens." Sarah nodded. She knew he was right, but the knowledge did not ease the burden. A young human aide approached them. "Ambassador, representatives from 6 new species are requesting to join the council. They are all from the Outer Rim, species that never had contact with the old council." "Tell them we will hear their petitions," Sarah said, "and make sure they understand the rules. We do not conquer. We do not control. We cooperate." The aide nodded and left. Sarah turned back to watch the council chamber as it filled with representatives preparing for the day's session. They would debate trade agreements. They would mediate a border dispute between 2 minor species. They would discuss scientific cooperation. Normal work, peaceful work, the work of civilization. They asked what humanity would become when we reached the stars, Sarah said softly. "Today the galaxy has its answer. And tomorrow?" Webb asked. Sarah smiled, though it did not reach her eyes. "Tomorrow we prove we can be more than warriors. Tomorrow we show them that the species that could destroy the old order can build something better in its place." She walked toward the council floor, where her seat waited among all the others. Equal representation. Equal voices. It was not perfect. The Coltharian Federation remained a threat. Old hatred still simmered. Some species still resented human influence, but it was better than what had come before. It was a galaxy where strength did not automatically grant authority, where age did not guarantee wisdom, where every species had the chance to determine their own future. Humanity had retaliated for New Perth. They had sent shockwaves through the galaxy. They had caused chaos to erupt in the council chambers. But in the end, they had not destroyed galactic civilization. They had transformed it. The cost had been terrible. The victories had been brutal. The methods had been ruthless. But humanity's children would never again kneel before those who believed power gave them the right to rule. That, Sarah thought as she took her seat among the equals she had helped create, was worth any price they had paid.